Like a lot of people nowadays, I get introduced to new information through social media. I think a lot of you probably relate to this. It's more common now to find out about something going on in the world through a TikTok than, say, the news. And I'm guessing, in your time scrolling, you've come across a video about ADHD. But how could I know this? Well, the hashtag ADHD on TikTok alone has over 30 billion views. That's a B, billion. We are talking about ADHD now more than ever. But do we understand it? And do we understand the people that have it? Well, I would argue no. Why? Well, because even though I have ADHD, I am still working to understand myself. In fact, I spent most of my life pretending that I didn't struggle more than the average kid to avoid being singled out as inadequate or the troubled child. But why would I do this? Wouldn't it have served me better to have just asked for help? Well, let me ask you this. How many times would someone need to tell you, you are too loud, you are too much to handle, you are too difficult to manage before you try to make yourself less? Once? Twice? 100 times? 1,000? Well, psychiatrist William W. Dodson estimates that by age 12, children with ADHD, in comparison to non-ADHD kids, receive 20,000 more negative messages from parents, teachers, and other adults. Now imagine how many more negative messages that ADHD kid will receive as they grow up into adulthood. I'm guessing that ADHD kid will do anything in their power to reduce the negative messaging. They'll create a mask, an identity that hides their struggles to appease those around them. I think some of you might relate to this. This is not exclusive to ADHD. We create masks for different reasons. Some of us created them because we felt that our truest selves couldn't be accepted. The ADHD kid, the closeted queer kid, the displaced kid in a foreign culture. There are many instances of feeling as though we must hide and instead create the person we believe will be accepted. If you have ever called yourself a people pleaser, you have known what it's like to live with a mask. All that people pleasing is finding the mask that best suits the person you're trying to please. And with this mask, you can make someone like you if you simply mirror them and act the way you assume they want you to. We become experts at reading other people. But the one person we truly don't know is ourselves. And I'll tell you, I used my mask to hide my ADHD before ever even knowing I had it. I'm guessing it's pretty obvious I have ADHD. I'm not standing as still as the other presenters. I'm fidgeting away, and you're also probably wondering, why is there a chair? I also live with something called vasovagal syncope, which is a fancy name for passing out under stress. I know, fun. So don't worry about me, but just in case. But the truth is, because I had learned to live with this mask, because I had learned to hide my challenges, I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 22 years old. See, I remember the only time I was ever yelled at in school, we were learning about a favorite subject of mine, Pompeii. Oh, yes. I was so excited. I could not stop talking to the kid next to me. And let me tell you, the teacher did not like that. On his third attempt of trying to get me to be quiet, he snapped. "Haley, go to the hall now." Okay. So I go to the hall. A essentially on the verge of a panic attack. And I wait 45 minutes for him to come and get me. And when he does, I'll never forget. He says this, "Haley, you need to learn to be quiet. Look at all the other girls in the class. They are all quiet. If you need cues on how to act, look at the other girls." I was 10, and I wasn't other girls like he suggested. Because even though I wasn't rocking back and forth in my chair and being disruptive every class, I have spent most of my time in the classroom bored because my brain was moving so quickly. But this was not a single incident. I would continue to hear negative comment after negative comment that would lead me to want to present the smallest, most malleable version of myself. Without knowing, I had begun building and creating my own mask. See, I would hear things like, "Haley, you are beyond annoying. If you just listened for once, you might actually learn something. Can you just shut up for once?" So I looked for the solution. How do I stop hearing these negative comments? And the only solution seemed to be become someone else. So I held in my ADHD symptoms, and I never asked for help. Instead, I hid them behind closed doors for years until university. See, I had built my mask, like a lot of other undiagnosed ADHD kids, around the education system. I had structure and accountability in school. And I had recognition from teachers and other students that I was doing well, and everyone perceived me as high functioning. And so instead of finding tools and strategies and accommodations that would last, I had found a temporary fix. And so when I went to university and a lot of this structure changed, the mask didn't hold up. I was failing tests for the first time in my life. I wasn't making any friends. In fact, I was losing them. And I was having more panic attacks than ever that were so debilitating, I could hardly function. But the worst part, in my mind, was that people were noticing. And you know, I've actually heard this from people with or without ADHD. They thrived in childhood and in school, but as they grew up and went into adulthood, their mental health declined rapidly. Even though our freedom increased with age, our ability to function decreased. Well, when you live your most foundational years behind different masks, you never really become a whole person. We become so far removed from our truest selves. Because if someone doesn't like a mask that we're presenting, I'll put a new one on. But if someone doesn't like our truest self, how could we ever possibly manage that? See, I never learned how to be okay with being disliked by certain people. I never learned how to be okay with being the loud kid. I didn't even know that was an option. And so, as an adult, I didn't have the energy or the ability to maintain the mask I had created. But I also didn't know who I was without the mask. And so I started living life as a shell of a human. I became incredibly depressed, and I clung to any person that would make me feel valuable the way that my mask had. And in my case, this meant I clung to an abuser. He would love bomb me and make me feel like the most amazing person in the world, only to hurt me over and over again. But the shell of a human that existed at this time couldn't imagine leaving because I thought I needed the validation and the mask my relationship created. Because on the outside, I'm in a happy relationship. But on the inside, I was trapped. Deciding to unmask is a commitment to vulnerability on the highest level. And this level of vulnerability can be so terrifying that many of us will choose to never do it. And the truth is, my decision to unmask came at a time when I needed it most. After living with my boyfriend at the time for a year, his aggression and threats of violence continued to increase. And on January 10th of 2022, I was assaulted by the man I loved. I was emergency moved out of the home, and I moved back in with my mom. And as you can guess, I was distraught. Here I was, back in my childhood home, where I had first begun putting the masks on. And now here I am as an adult, a shell of a human, not good enough without the mask, and apparently not good enough with it. And I was realizing that this mask, this drive for perceived perfection, was killing me. And one day, as an attempt to distract myself from feeling so lost and so broken, I made a video without the mask. It was about how hard I find it is to eat with ADHD. I'll walk into the kitchen, pace around a bit, open the fridge, decide to walk away, only to come back very quickly, opening that same fridge, assuming somehow the contents had changed. It was my attempt of being related to. And to my surprise, people were seeking that same thing. In the following weeks, the video would climb to over 3.5 million views with thousands of comments from people all over the world. I was being seen in my struggle, and I was being accepted. See, I'd never really talked about how ADHD had made my life harder, but people wanted to hear it. People struggling to accept themselves. People afraid of admitting their own struggles. People seeking connection, connected to me. My dumb little video was the catalyst to my unmasking. And I would do this unmasking by continuing to show up online every day to an audience of now over 500,000 people as my truest and most vulnerable self. And I'd start hearing things like, "Your bravery to be yourself makes me want to do that." Oh my. The only thing that had changed was that I was showing up as me in all my weirdness and my struggles. When you begin to see that people are like you, struggle like you do, laugh at the same things you do, love like you do, you stop being so afraid to be you. The strongest impact that my unmasking had on me was it proved to me for the first time in my life that my unmasked self was valuable. And so I continued to show up in my day-to-day life as the loud, the overly energetic, the passionate person I've always been under the mask. And this year, I got to go to Pompeii. And that little girl, being told to go to the hallway, being told to be quieter, having a panic attack, she got to run free in her unmasked joy. My unmasking in its vulnerability was incredibly freeing. Did I lose people along the way? Yeah, of course I did. They had only ever known me and my mask. And so my unmasking felt like a betrayal of their trust, which it wasn't. I was simply no longer betraying myself. The beauty of my unmasking is it made room for people in my life that love and support the truest version of me. there is no more pretending. There is no more being the person I think you need me to be. If I'm not the person you need, go find that person. And so, you might be sitting here realizing that you are betraying yourself by masking. I see you. I was you. So I want to leave you with this. If comfortable, soften your gaze or close your eyes. Imagine a time in your life when you received negative messaging. When did you feel the need to create a smaller version of you? What mask would you build to reduce the negative messaging? What mask did you create to protect this version of you? And as you open your eyes, are you willing to begin the process of letting it go? Thank you.